Okay, so week 2, video number 2. This is very interesting. So this is, you're gonna get a snippet of the way that I think in particular. And in general, when I do this kind of examples and stuff in class, students tend to like it. So we'll see how it comes out recorded online. Okay, so the chapter finishes talking about environmentalism and political Islam. Okay, so I disagree with the book. How do I disagree? I disagree because, in my opinion, after you have a presentation of ideologies of the left and the right, you have liberalism, conservatism, fascism, communism, socialism. Okay? You should not have environmentalism and political Islam. Why? Because they are not comprehensive ideologies, but they are only a part of the ideological sphere. They are pieces that then you can combine with the other ideologies, but they are not ideologies that stand on their own 2 feet. They are not complete ideologies, okay? Environmentalism, for example, can be used both by the left and by the right, okay? And it's the same things about political Islam. There is not one brand of political Islam, okay? The book tries to convince you, that there's a certain radical way of political Islam, and that, that's the way, the political Islam that we should be thinking about. But hey, also be careful, because not all people who belong to the Muslim world adhere to those ideas, which is like saying, hey, let's give you a presentation of the craziest wing of the Democratic Party or of the Republican Party in America, the craziest. And then it tells you, yeah, but in any case, most people in America don't think like that, actually. And so I'm like, okay, if most people don't think like that, why are you making me think that that's the ideology? Okay, that's what I find very problematic in this case. Okay, and it's the same thing about environmentalism. Going back to environmentalism, environmentalism says that before we do something else, we need to take care of the environment, okay? But it's not like the environment is the only issue that there is, okay? If you have a government, you're gonna have a secretary to the environment or a secretary to the Environment Protection Agency in every country in the world, okay? But there are many ways that we can look at environmentalism. There are some people that just say, oh, all we need to do to fix the environment is to do technological change. We should do incentives to have more like solar panels and Tesla cars and windmills, wind turbines, and like we have in Eastern Washington and Eastern Oregon. And then you have people on the left that say, no, it's actually that we have to fix poverty, we have to fix inequality, to fix the environment, because, it's just that poor people don't know any better, or like poor countries don't know any better, and so they like burn coal, and you have to fix this kind of stuff before you fix the environment, okay? And so it's actually, I'm not saying that environmentalism is not interesting. I'm just saying that it's confusing to have it in the same chapter of other ideologies. In my opinion, it should be in a chapter that talks about different political issues. You could have immigration, you could have the environment, of course, you could have unemployment, for example, okay? And these are all different political issues, but because of the fact that the environment has been kept aside for a long time, and it's kind of a new subject now, we're all very aware of global warming and stuff like that, that then it makes it look as if it was its own ideology. But in my opinion, it's not, okay? And it's not like it means the book is right. We are allowed to have disagreement about these kind of things. And so I think that it's important for you to see me give you this example, because you might also have disagreements of this kind, okay? And finishing about political Islam, what you have to understand in that in Islamic societies, you're gonna have liberals and conservatives, surprise, surprise, okay? You're gonna have people that, just like the American religious right, think that because of the fact that in their opinion life is sacred, then everybody should be pro-life, And it's the same thing for political Islam, okay? And but I don't think that there is nothing to gain about only presenting the most extreme version of an ideology, because that's not the way that we can understand it at its best, okay? And also, like the martyrs of what we know in the West as the jihad are not any different from any other kind of terrorist. Terrorism is like the most extreme form of political action. And do you know who so it's silly to ask questions in a video. So one of my favorite political facts about terrorism, which blew my mind, was when I learned some 10 or 15 years ago that most of the terrorist techniques that were taken by Islamic terrorists, like in the 1980s and in the 2000s, were actually taken from the IRA, which was the Irish Republican Army that was fighting the British government in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, and that got a lot of people killed. And those were extreme nationalist terrorists, and they were Catholic and Republican and Democratic from Ireland. So not talking about terrorism for a whole chapter, and then only talking about terrorism when you talk about political Islam, you see where the problem lies, that it makes it sound as if terrorism only existed in political Islam. But if you look at history, terrorism has existed in many different forms. And for example, in the US in the 70s, you had far left terrorists. I don't know if any of you know, you should look bombs on campus in Eugene in 1969, 1970. My building, PLC, Prince Lucian Campbell Hall, there was a bomb put in the basement of the building that caused $50,000 of damage. They were lucky that no one died, and they were associated with far-left terrorism. Okay, so we have to try to put things in a broader perspective, and we have to try not to be confused and to know the facts, and to know that the things are more complex than they might seem at first sight. Okay, and what is the reason why there's such a big problem with political Islam? And it's all because of the fact, of course, of 9/11, which is a watershed event in the history of American politics, okay, in American foreign politics. But it's not the only accident of terrorism in our history, okay? So we have to be able to put things in perspective. Now, the last part of our chapter deals with the 10 principles of conservatism, the reading of our chapter of our week, okay? The readings that we have seen so far were organized in a certain way from the book. This is the first time that we use some reading from the outside. Why do we look at the 10 principles of conservatism? Because I want you to be able to look at a certain ideology in more detail, okay? So you might wonder why I assigned you conservatism. I think that it's because it's not talked about very much, and I think you might be more familiar with other ideologies, okay? And also because I feel that right now we have to be able to understand which elements of a certain ideology are compatible with other ideologies, okay? And you have to be able to see what parts of an ideology you agree with and what parts of an ideology you disagree with. Okay, you've already seen from the book that conservatism is about small government and tradition, and that it hates the idea of fast change. Okay, I assigned this little reading from 1993 by Russell Kirk, not because it's perfect, but because it touches on many different aspects. Okay, and it shows you that ideologies are complex beasts, okay, complex animals, and they are way too often they are oversimplified. Okay. At the beginning, Kirk himself says that conservatism is not an ideology. Okay, I disagree. But what is he getting at there? He's getting at the fact that conservatism is more complex than we think. Okay, which is a very good point. Okay, so the 10 ideas, I'm not going to go into detail on all of them, but number one is the idea that society has to be rooted in a moral order. So moral order that it's rooted in our conscience. Okay. Number two, custom, convention, continuity. The idea is that conservatives prefer the kind of society that they know to a kind of society that they don't know. Okay. Number 3, principle of prescription. The idea is that the tradition is good, individuals are stupid, and humanity is wise. This means relying on precedent, on the way things were done before, but also very interesting, he uses the word relying on prejudice. Okay, so if you're prejudiced against a group of people, the prejudice is going to be slow to change. Okay, and then number 4, principle of prudence. Okay, the idea is that you have to be prudent, you have not to make brisk choices and stuff. And I think that by now, with the idea of custom, tradition, prescription, prudence, I think that you understand why it is that people say that you are more leftist when you're young and you're more conservative when you're old. Because when you're young, you want to change things fast. And so young people are naturally more revolutionary. And so that's why it's harder to be young and conservative, even if I'm not saying that. But most young people are prone not to be conservative because young people are impatient. Young people want things to change now, and conservatism is rooted in a principle of prudence, of tradition. Okay, so you can see this tension. And then it's conservatism, Kirk says, is rooted in number 5, principle of variety. Okay, the idea is that differences are positive. Okay, and this is not so much differences in terms of like ethnic differences, racial differences, and stuff like that, but differences between the rich and the poor. So it's basically anti-tax, and it's basically saying that the only form of equality that matters is equality in front of the law. Okay. Then imperfectibility, which means that perfection doesn't exist and that you shouldn't be looking for utopia. Okay. And then freedom and property are linked to each other, which is again the idea that you shouldn't violate property and that you shouldn't have high taxes. Then you have the idea that community counts. So this is the importance of federalism. This is the importance of local government, of having powerful local government, and each community decide on their own. And then 9 is the idea of checks and balances. Conservatives are against powerful precedents and they are against anarchy, so against chaos. Okay. And then permanence and progression must be reconciled. So it basically says we know that some change needs to happen over time because otherwise we stagnate, but that every change should be weighed with prudence. Okay? So these are the readings for this week. I will record one small video about how to do the first writing. And good luck to you all. And I'm looking forward to reading your comments on Canvas.